I'd rather be an artist whose work was interpreted by legitimate critique and not someone who was categorically thrust into a situation as an object lesson where violent um, misdeeds were subject to overdubs of interpretation in which I was the object of an observation. Needless to say, I'd rather be in a world where painters painted and got talked about normally. Um, okay, so I recognize in Marinetti's Futurist Manifesto from the turn of the 20 early in 1916 or something, or earlier, 1909, whatever he was writing, the passion of being alive, the vitality that's at work. But I also recommend seeing it in historical context because you can see the self deception that Wood's work and the field of vision that embraced fascism when he should have been more concerned about you know, his future children and his grandparents. Past and future should have given rise to something other than exhibitionism of his dramatic sensibilities, the strutting, posturing, and so on. Well, I read a professor critiquing, reviewing Cubists who were going on like in Paris, who said that they didn't that they looked down askance at people's analysis of their art. And I thought that can't be true. I mean, he makes it sound like it's Elvis Presley spurning jazz theory at a cocktail party. I don't think that's true because even though there were incidents where artists were sheltered through gallery owners from exhibitions by having steady clients like Picasso, Braque, Picasso, these men wrote self representations that were clearly an invitation to analyze their work. The closest thing I can come to what this professor was driving at was Picasso saying, I'm not a researcher when I paint. Don't call me a researcher. I discover as I paint. And he makes this distinction. Well, I'm a painter second. And as people around me know, I've been working on a new piece in a search for what I call revisiting the crossroads of Cubism in 1916, where the futurists and D.W. Griffith and Hitler's Hollywood made a decision with the help of mystics in Ouspensky that led to David Bowie's near overthrow of the United States. Something that's generally denied, but I don't deny it. I've been doing too much research into the way that these people killed JFK and so on. I don't want to get into the strong language. What I would rather do is talk about the critical analysis I've tried to bring to grips with the idea of revisiting Cubism and using the Cubist technique, which is no easy thing to accomplish, in a picture that metaphorically makes a commentary about where I think they went wrong. Revisiting the crossroads means going back to the time where Blysender's lure was made anonymously by the Axis and by name among the Allies. A time when his invisible arm and the theory of the fourth dimension, the Houdini smoke and mirrors, began to take shape in the mind of King Edward and Cecil B. DeMille, giving rise to the fraud that the Beatles pulled with the smoke and mirrors of the revenge attack on behalf in the name of Yoko Ono that we're living through right now. And if if you ever read A Wrinkle in Time, I don't know if you did, so I'll explain. There's something called a tesseract. To explain a tesseract, she takes a string and brings it together so that there's a loop. It's a wrinkle in time that brings 2 points together. Well, in a sense, cubism is a tesseract. You see, very difficult to describe shading that brings a foreground into the background by way of a midground, so that the midground is both background shared with the background and yet a foreground to the background. There's copious attempts to describe what they do, and I've been working on this kind of shade and line, you know, measure of horizontal and vertical as opposed to like the density and weight of shades of gray and so forth to get a sense of how they operated. And so far, what I've come up with incorporates a real projector, an old antique film projector. So that what you would have is the idea of capturing the fourth dimension in 2 dimensions to project a, a reality that is in keeping with the Cubist sense that painting may be false, but it communicates a greater truth. I think this is what the people who consider John Lennon brilliant, as they would the Futurist Manifesto, think. Even though he didn't really die, he stepped out and they got him somewhere safe, and they put on a show for Hollywood reality. The message of their superiority is the truth behind this fraud. And this is something I think should have been pouted down by the powers who should have said, no, we need to protect public schools and public lands, and we need to feed the masses and teach peace and protect the earth. Instead, they whipped up their idea of intelligent design was that they could make the earth into the New Testament apocalypse with the climate machine. That's their idea of intelligent design. They don't believe in intelligent design. They believe in intelligent design. They look at Buckminster Fuller. But anyway, it's called Revisiting the Crossroads. It's a piece of art that I've been working on lately. I'd like to show it to you, but maybe I can show it to you. I'll see if I can. Just hold on a second. I'll see if I can track down an image of it. I don't know if I have it here. Yeah, I do have it here. I don't know if you can actually see it. It's New Incarnation that has that um, with a with a superimposed antique real projector. But this isn't mine. This is from a Cubist line study. This is what I mean when I say that Cubism is like a tesseract. I'm trying to get the technique. So ideally, a person wouldn't have to see this video. They would look at the image and say, I understand that image because I know about the times and the people and what happened and stuff. It's hard, man.